Joker Folie is absolutely tanking in the box office. The people are on a witch hunt for this movie, so there is a lot to talk about. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Mate Night, where we are reviewing films until someone invites us to Cannes. You are hosted by myself, Jamie, and the gracious, the tenacious, and the marvelly spacious is Fred.
Spacious? Wait a minute, you said I'm fat.
Why are you always got to take it the wrong way?
Gracious, spacious.
Marvelously
gracious,
spacious.
Tenacious, and large.
We have three different conversations for you guys today, titled Joker 2, Is It Truly Terrible? Joker 2, A Colour Theory, and Do You Really Need to Method Act? They will all be separated by the Mate Night tune, so go put the kettle on, get your bloody washing done, and let's talk some movies.
Oh, we've gone for it.
Joker Folie is a complete disaster. It is officially scored lower than Madam Web on CinemaScore. It has a measly 33% critic score and a somehow and impossibly worse 31% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Yet, it is led by a generation-defining actor. It immediately follows the once highest-grossing R-rated film of all time, and it had a budget of $200 million.
What went wrong?
I've done some investigating, read hundreds of critics' reviews, and analysed the film in detail so that we can get to the bottom of this case. What we're going to do is this. Have a chat about the good and the bad, discuss some things that the masses are saying, and finally, calculate the official Mate Night score to determine definitively if this film is as bad as everyone says.
I can't wait to find out what the Mate Night score is going to be.
I think you wouldn't be the only one.
You sound convincing.
So, Fred, what is Joker 2?
An exercise in self-indulgence masquerading as originality.
Oh, that's scathing. Talk to me then. So no, I think I can see where it's come from, but elaborate.
I spent most of it thinking this isn't as bad as everyone says. Mm-hmm. It was clear. I could see why people were offended. You know, like not offended in the way like that's offensive, but it's almost offensive to my senses.
Yes.
Because they really were like, we're going to do whatever the fuck we want here, and you have to sit and watch it.
Yeah, okay.
Which is the only reason I think people are so annoyed, because I didn't like have a shockingly bad time.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, this is kind of bad.
Yeah, okay.
I liked that they tried something new.
Yeah.
Genuinely. Like, think about some of the best sequels of all time. Godfather Part 2.
Yes.
Aliens, another example.
Oh, yeah.
Things where, in both cases, they really tried something different. Like, they went full-on character study of Michael Corleone, Godfather Part 2. Mm-hmm. Aliens, let's make this an action film. Move away from the horror. And they're two of the most seminal sequels of the 20th century. I respect that they went into this saying, we have a really successful film. Let's try and beat it. We're not going to try and beat it by doing the same thing again. We're going to have to go outside the box. Let's try a musical.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's awesome.
And it was weird, but also it's a weird setting. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think it was that much worse than the first one.
So you didn't really like Joker 1?
Not really. It was copying Taxi Driver, wasn't it?
Okay.
And it was all, woe is me, literally I am the most unfortunate person there possibly could be, and then I go kill someone, then I go on a rampage. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's me versus the world. The world's a real problem. That's kind of self-indulgent as well.
Yeah.
And then there was in the original, I won't spoil Joker Part 2, I'm going to go into Joker 1. Which I already did because I said he killed someone. But if you're listening to Joker Part 2, surely, come on.
Probably watch Joker 1.
Watch Joker 1. So, the fact that he was kind of schizophrenic, he was having visions, and it turns out it was all a big twist. No, it just felt a bit like, okay, of course that was made up. Anything that was
derivative, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I felt. And this, you can't say it's derivative.
Some critics have.
Have they? Well.
But no, I'm with you on that.
Derivative of what? Maybe I should ask that.
Well, they didn't elaborate themselves, but they did speak specifically about they said a derivative musical. which again I just think is completely
Do
incorrect.
they mean because they're not original songs, maybe?
Yeah, but surely that doesn't make any musical that uses a soundtrack.
Yeah.
That is therefore by default a derivative musical. That just doesn't make sense.
If they haven't said it specifically, I'd like to understand why they. This seemed pretty far from derivative for me. Having said that, it's not like I enjoyed it. Are we doing our gut reactions?
Please tell me if you could put how much you enjoyed the movie. This isn't the Make Night score, but if you put how much you enjoyed this movie out of 10.
5.4.
Okay, yeah.
What about you?
5.9.
Right, okay.
We've got very similar scores there, I would say. I feel a lot more defensive about this film than I think other people do.
Well, you've read hundreds of reviews on it.
I have extensively researched this film, and the people are being horrible.
Scathing.
Like horrible about it. And the truth is, I think it's completely unfucking justified.
Yeah.
I think it's, like I say, it's a witch hunt, basically. Everyone's just kind of jumping up on a bit of a bandwagon of hate.
But why?
There are some fatal flaws, which I'm going to offer to you later, that I think are central to why the enjoyment of this film fails. It is the responsibility of the filmmaker to make it an enjoyable experience, 100%. But just because it's not an enjoyable experience doesn't therefore mean that it deserves 30% Rotten Tomatoes. It gets lower than Madam Web. It's got the lowest DCEU score in history. It's got 5.3 on IMDb. I just think it's completely unfair. And I think that the thing is, it really does have real character to it. And it's really trying to do stuff visually in the way that it was directed. I think Todd Phillips has a really amazing command of color, and he uses it in the storytelling in a really beautiful way. Again, I want to stress this. It is his job to make an enjoyable film, and that doesn't mean using colors in a commanding way. But I also think that it is a well-made movie in some ways, and color is one of those that I think really was quite special about this movie, as a lot of the story is told through color. I'll get into that in a bit later anyway, but obviously, it's a profound character exploration. This is kind of both Joker 1 and 2. I think that the question that it's asking of, let's take this villain that's been a commanding, mysterious presence forever and really try and figure out what it would take for a human being to become like that. I think that's a really cool thing to do. Like, I'm really grateful that they did that, because I always see the Joker and I'm like, that's a really cool character. I want to know more about him. And this is exactly what they're doing. I like the fact they've tried that, and I will not have anyone say that Joaquin Phoenix is anything other than amazing in this. I think that he is just incredible. It's made some very bold decisions. Yes, some of it didn't land, but if we want good cinema, we need to be forgiving of failed boldness and ruthless with effortless mediocrity. Deadpool and Wolverine got 7.9. This got 5.3. That is completely ludicrous. Deadpool is an insult of a film. This tried as hard as it possibly could and failed.
Oh, that's such a good point. It really is something that should be not championed. Look, it is a failure. But the vitriol and witch hunt, which I'm glad I avoided, because I purposefully went into this. It was inescapable hearing that this wasn't doing well and people weren't enjoying it. And I went into it trying to avoid as much as possible to have a blank slate. And immediately I was like, does something happen that makes this bad? You say there are some choices and there are narrative moments that I didn't agree with.
Yes.
Not just with the style, but story points where I was like, that kind of is a bit bad.
Yes.
And the overall thing that they went for, I do think failed.
Yes.
I can say it's the musical element. That's not a spoiler. Most people know that it's in some form a musical. But outside of that,
it was that fine.
It's not like it wasn't offensive to me in any way. I heard arguments that the original Joker was essentially for comic book fans very frustrating, because they kind of made a taxi driver in a comic book setting, and it goes against the
universe, the canon.
That's the one. But also, like, they even shoehorn in right at the end Bruce Wayne's parents dying, like every bloody film. You think you're going to get away with it, but then they even in this one they shoehorn his parents' death. I mean, they don't do that in this, but there is a thing at the end of this which I didn't agree with as an ending. Still, like, this one was fine. Like, the whole time I was like, yeah, this is fine.
Yes.
This has the same feel as the last one, but at least they're doing something a bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. This is a weird character. And maybe I don't enjoy it, but also I don't see why it's been completely drawn through the mud like this. So I want to understand,
Yeah.
as someone who did decide to really delve into the weeds, what did you find?
Okay, one of the things that makes this really quite an insufferable experience for people is specifically the narrative, because what it does is, at its core, the first movie is asking, what would it take for a human being to become Joker? And I think in the second movie, what the question it's really asking is, how would that human being handle that? And so on the face of it, the plot is love stories, courtroom dramas, all that. But actually, the plot is really about Arthur versus Joker. And it's all a character exploration.
There was some real kind of on-the-nose Jungian references.
Absolutely. But it gets confused when they made it. And what happens is the tangible material plot that is used basically to keep something moving whilst we explore this character, which is the courtroom stuff and all the love stuff and all that, has a deeply dissatisfying conclusion that effectively feels like it's gone absolutely nowhere. And people have spent 2.5 hours in a really miserable environment with a really unsatisfying way to conclude what it's concluded. I'm not going to give any details, but and I think that it really is that narrative of, if you look at it as a character exploration, it's actually quite a good narrative, but it gets confused. It presents you almost two narratives in parallel, one which is more tangible and real, and also really fucking annoying and leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And the whole time you're in a bad environment that you just don't want to be in.
He does have a very mopey, like it's same with Joker 1. You do find you're in quite a dark place watching it.
Absolutely.
It's very much like, this is morbid and nothing is particularly nice about this whole setting. So I can understand. And to add to that, if I'd have gone in knowing nothing, my opinion on it may be worse.
I agree with that.
I definitely put some thought into how I really felt about it, aside from being defensive that it wasn't that bad when I decided to give it a 5.4. Like, if I didn't want to be purely gut reaction for this. I wanted to be like, okay, if I just watched this and I hadn't even heard anything, I probably would have enjoyed it a bit less. I'd have been like, this is dumb. Why have they done that? But it's the fact that all I've heard about is how this is an absolute aberration.
People hate it.
That you're like, right, okay, is it? Now, the ending, you make some good points. Like, it does derail. And even at this point in my watching it, I was like, I had spent a lot of time justifying situations and being like, this isn't that bad. You know what? It's kind of shit, but it's fine. It's fine. My thought process was that. And then near the end, I was like, okay, it is getting a bit... getting to the point where some of the points you made are valid. And the way they went about it, even a apologist could see.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely bang on. Even as somebody who wants to defend this film, I still have to concede that plot-wise, it was a mess. And there was just it was trying to be too clever, I think, with the narrative. And we're doing 12 Angry Men in an episode in a couple of days, so check that out if you're listening. And one of the things that it does so well, I think, is it just has a brutally simple plot. It's like, here are the stakes, here's the beginning, here's the middle, and then here's the end in 90 minutes. And what Joker 2 does is it goes, okay, so we're going to have this, and then we're also going to have this, but don't forget about this, and then we're going to try and do this character thing, and then we're going to have like a love, and then a courtroom, and then and you end it, and you're just like, where the fuck did any of that go? Like,
you make such a good point. If you strip down how basic the actual sequence of events is, you get to a point when you're about at the hour and a half mark, which, as we both know, perfect.
That's when you should be finishing
perfect film length. But you get to the point where I remember checking my checking my phone to see what time it was, thinking we must be nearing the conclusion. And then being like 45 minutes thinking, man, that is a bit tough. That's a bit tough to bear.
Yeah.
It wasn't like Trap where you were enjoying the ride at all points.
It was
Even
almost
if you
the
thought it was
opposite to
stupid, you did get to a point in this where you're like, fucking hell, come on.
Yeah.
Considering if you strip back exactly what happens in this film, there's no need for it to be 2 hours 20.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. I think you could take like whole plot things out of it, just completely take them out, and it would be a much better experience.
Yeah, some sequences were just not necessary. I do want to say, though, added to things that I like, you mentioned Joaquin Phoenix. I find Joaquin Phoenix a bit of an interesting fella. Mm-hmm. Just from interviews, obviously he's a bit Marmite. I err on the side of, I find him a bit pretentious. So, I'm not saying he's a bad person, but it does affect the performance a bit in a way that it shouldn't. But what I do want to say is I thought Lady Gaga was really good.
I was going to ask you about that. Okay, yeah.
I really thought she was good. I spent a lot of it at the start again being like, I'm enjoying Lady Gaga on this. I think she's really good. So another perk. It wasn't just that it was fine. She was
good, was she?
That was another element I liked. I thought the performances across the board. I mean, Brendan Gleeson's always great.
Brendan Gleeson's awesome.
I don't know if there was any performances that I thought were that bad. I found the guy who played Two-Face had a really buttery voice.
Yeah, okay, Harvey Dent.
Harvey Dent.
A lot of people didn't like him. Yeah.
And what do you think of that thing?
People did not.
He's
Did you like him?
No, but I thought his voice was dreamy. For those listening on YouTube, this is part of our Road to Cannes series, where we're reviewing films until someone invites us to the Cannes Film Festival. We're currently working through the entire IMDb top 250 in alphabetical order. Felt like that was a fitting starting point for us. We're also going to be catching new releases as they come out. So if you're enjoying this and want to work through some of the classics, please click the link on the screen now to see our other films. You can also subscribe if you want to join us on our journey.
Okay, so you mentioned how comic book fans were unhappy with Joker 1 because of the universe thing with Bruce Wayne and all that. This will be the first major DC comic film to be released under the new DC Elseworlds banner. So this is the term that was created in 1991 by DC Comics for stories which are outside of the canon and set place in alternative realities. So that's why you've got Bruce Wayne as a kid, you've got all these different timelines messing up. They have actually acknowledged that.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Elseworlds, yeah. So they've obviously got a similar thing with Marvel on the what ifs. I don't know if they have an equivalent in the comics. You wouldn't be surprised if they do.
They took our What If series.
No,
they've been watching Mate Night like everyone else.
Yeah, they've only been doing it the last couple of months. Yeah, but it's something obviously that people really like the concept of
having a
how
separate...
things could have happened, implications of things happening.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, you mentioned Lady Gaga. One of the critic opinions, which I thought would be interesting to get your take on, they didn't really use Lady Gaga properly. They should have had her belt out some notes.
It was clearly a choice. Lady Gaga is obviously a very accomplished singer, and her approach to the songs in it was croaky and crackly, not really exclaiming and not carrying her voice at all, which meant that some of the higher notes would break a bit. And to be honest, the reason why I didn't really mind so much is because Joaquin did a similar thing, and it was clear the character is doing it in that way. I think that it was weird enough that they shoehorned a musical into this. If they'd have then had Lady Gaga fucking belting out these songs and Joaquin Phoenix just like either going for it. Well, the only options there would be Joaquin Phoenix to be painfully below par, or maybe he really goes for it and be
painfully below
par. So what he did in this case was, it was like the character obviously can't properly sing.
Yeah.
He's just going to kind of have a go at these songs.
Yeah.
And Lady Gaga also, although she was more tuneful, was kind of holding back, clearly.
Yes.
But there were a couple of instances where she did go for it, and it almost carried a bit more weight. I can't remember the exact part because I only watched this once, but so there's one of their duo songs, the last one. It's quite a climactic part of the film for the characters. She does go for it on like one of the last notes, and I remember thinking, wow, okay, cool. It's cool that she's had a chance to really put her all into one.
Well, I tell you what, I think that really kind of highlights what I think probably the second and kind of the only other real big problem with the movie was they kind of did a musical and they also kind of didn't a musical.
And they
was
pussyfooted
really...
around a musical, didn't they?
And I think that really the thing that bothered me the most, the music was taking place within the universe mostly.
Yeah.
And the actors would begin singing before any music came in. And because they aren't singers and because it's not obviously a musical, you kind of forget that it's a half musical. And then one of the characters just starts fucking singing. And it's not something you really get used to throughout the film. Like, just time after time, a song ends, and then you're like, forget that it's a musical, and then they just start singing again. And you're like, what the fuck where's this coming from?
It does make me think how much I'd love to have been a fly on the wall for the conversation that kicked off, shall we do a musical?
Yeah, okay.
Like, out of nowhere, whether it was Joaquin driving it or Todd Phillips or Lady Gaga.
Well, I saw somebody say that he didn't want to do a second movie, and then they just piled so much money in that he was like, fuck it, I might as well. And I think that's partly why there are all these really strange decisions, is he was just like, fuck it, I might as well.
Todd?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, do you know if Joaquin had quite a bit of creative control in this?
I don't know.
That's what I'd heard.
Okay.
But someone had the idea to make it a musical. Who was it?
But this is the thing.
Do you reckon they brought Lady Gaga in just as an actress and she just started singing all their lines?
Like, oh, fuck. No, I know that they didn't, because I know that Lady Gaga was giving Joaquin Phoenix notes throughout it because he was shaking. He was so nervous about singing in front of all these people. So thank God the movie did so well, because, you know, that would really destroy his confidence if people were nasty about it.
You know, taking risks like that and seeing the reward for your endeavors.
Oh, bless him. Joaquin Phoenix, I thought he was really, really good in it. Here's why. It's not often that I will comment on acting because I don't really feel confident doing it, but I think that... So some reviews have said Joaquin Phoenix is not as good as the first one. And I think that's so unfair, because maybe he's not, but he's still incredible. There are a lot of actors who just struggle to do happy or sad or angry. And he has scene after scene after scene where he will have to be simultaneously hysterically laughing whilst trying to swallow it, whilst being embarrassed, whilst looking miserable or heartbroken or desperate. And then literally in the same shot, we'll have to pull a whole new deck of emotions out and pull those off. You can't finish this film, and the only thing that you can say about Joaquin Phoenix's acting is not as good as the first one. That's so unfair.
Such a cop-out, because I just think, without any substance of why you feel like that, I just don't know what your reasoning could be. He is phenomenal as the Joker. Like, that laugh cry that he does,
it's horrible,
is incredible, like how he manages to do that. Whether you like the character or not, I guess he's morbid as fuck.
Yeah.
Maybe he brings you down.
But saying your comment on Joaquin Phoenix's acting
is worse. I don't know. I think that's just lazy. Just another reason for people not to like it.
And that's exactly where I think a lot of this stems from. Is it is a massive witch hunt. It's not a good film. I think it's a 5.9, maybe up, maybe lower. It's hard to say for sure. But it is not as bad as people say it is. It's just so totally unfair.
And that, to be honest, his pretentiousness, which I mentioned to you, part of the reason I'm ambivalent towards him is how he comes across. That probably doesn't help.
You're almost certainly right.
Like, people... the worm turns so quickly, the court of public opinion, and it can go from... He did a very famous interview on David Letterman, and I don't want to butcher the facts on this, but he had a reason for doing it this way. I think it was something to do with one of his brothers being very publicly shamed. There was a big media
press were really
circus,
horrible to his brother, weren't
something
they?
like that. And then he went on David Letterman and had like this excruciatingly awkward interview purposefully, and he was just horrible. It's really horrible to watch. I've tried to rewatch it. I struggle with awkward. That's one I can't do. I really struggle with awkwardness, and yeah, it's just terrible to watch. It's not nice. And then it turns out he was just doing it as like a bit to just
publicity stunt.
Yeah, publicity stunt around. You guys have been horrible, so this is why. So that happened. People obviously think he's being an arsehole, and then, oh no, he's actually being righteous, and then he's being self-righteous, and then he wins an Oscar, and people are like, oh yeah, he's the best thing since sliced bread. He can be rude to people if they're being obnoxious and asking questions. And now it's just, it's our turn to find him annoying again.
Yeah. You can't take... You always do, and I don't mean you, but everyone, always do take how much we like the person into account when we assess their acting ability, but you shouldn't. Like, yeah, he is annoying and pretentious and weird, but at the end of the day, when you sit down to watch Joker, Folie à Deux, you need to just assess, is he doing a good job, yes or no? I feel like people say that Henry Cavill is better than he is because he's so likable. Like, I don't think he's that good at acting. Like, I don't think he's terrible. He's perfectly fine.
But he's just the best.
But he's just so likable. Everyone's like, yeah, he's a great actor. And it's like, I don't think I would go that far.
To be fair, I don't see much. I've not seen people say he's a great actor. I've seen people say he's the perfect Superman.
Yeah, that's fair.
I will agree that I've never watched Henry Cavill in something and thought, you know what, Henry Cavill really is great in this. He's just like so handsome. He's so handsome and nice, gorgeous. and he's like a geek and loves games. And if you watch his interviews, he is like so smart.
He is, and he's so likable, and he's so down to earth. If you're listening at this point, we're not going to go into spoilers. We won't ruin the film, but if you really want to keep this film completely fresh, you might want to dip out here, because I do have a couple of specifics that I want to ask Fred about. Steve Coogan's character and performance. What did you think?
So he's not lampooning, but he's doing a bit of a... 60s to 70s
reporter grilling.
Yeah, reporter grilling, but also the accent he's doing is sort of like Walter Cronkite, newscaster of that time. I thought it was quite cool seeing him because I didn't know he was going to be in it. And he's such an adept impersonator. Like, even though he's going for a caricature accent, he's so on it with them that you just like seeing him. Did you have any anti-feeling towards him?
I think just because I'm so used to seeing the characters that he plays, it felt a bit weird to me. I don't think he did a bad job of it. I just think it was a weird choice to put Steve Coogan there. It was a bit like with June and
Christopher Walken.
It was like, why have you picked him for this role? Like, this is such a morbid film.
Yeah,
and you put Alan fucking Partridge in it.
For the American audience, though, obviously Alan Partridge isn't famous. Some people know Steve Coogan because he's in a lot of stuff, but they might not know him by name. I don't think it'll be as jarring for them.
Okay, the term folie à deux, given to the Joker sequel, comes from the 19th century French psychiatrists, and it means the madness of two. What does it mean?
Madness of two?
Holy shit, do you speak French? So, obviously that's referring to Harley Quinn and Joker, Arthur Fleck, and the relationship that those two guys have. Okay, it's time to settle if this film justifies the hate. The score it has on IMDb is 5.3 out of 10. We're going to visit the Late Night Machine, where we will press some knobs and twiddle some buttons, and it will spit out a final score, which, as everyone knows,
is never wrong.
Certainly hasn't ever been before.
Never has, never will be.
Never will be. So we'll be back in a minute.
Okay, let's go.
Oh, well, there we go.
Whoa! What an adventure!
Jesus Christ, man!
That was a Folie à Deux if ever I've seen one.
So we have returned from the Late Night Machine. It has spit out a number, which, you know what?
I'm just the sound
effect. So IMDb gave 5.3 out of 10. We have put it into the Late Night Machine. We have come out with a final score to determine if we think that is a fair score. So,
and IMDb, let's be reasonable, will go lower as well.
Without further ado, that was a really funny joke, that, Fred. You just completely ignored it.
What? Without further ado? Oh, it wasn't a joke. You just stared at me for so long.
Like, he's just not
without
fucking...
Folie à Deux. Yeah, nice.
Without further ado, the Late Night Machine has given Joker 2 a final score of 6.14 out of 10.
Very fair. I mean, it's always right, isn't it?
It's always right. And I think that for a quick closing statement, this film was miserable and insufferable and just not a nice experience. But There was some great performances. It was directed reasonably well. There was some good song choices.
They went for something. They tried
really
something
tried
respectable.
something. Yeah, I think what you say, self-indulgent, I say trying something exciting and fun and new. Thank God it's not just another commercial fucking moneymaker, which it definitely could have been. But yeah, it wasn't a very fun film either.
No.
But it was quite well, I think, in ways
It was a bit tough to get through, wasn't it?
other than plot and the certain elements of the sound, I think that it was reasonably well made.
Yeah, we don't really get the whole hate on this one.
I don't get the hate.
Having said that, 6.14 is below the par of
It's a bad film.
we'd recommend it to
Yeah,
everyone,
we wouldn't recommend it. And that largely comes down to it's just a miserable experience to sit through. Lady Gaga went full method acting for her performance.
Oh.
This is the same as Joaquin in both films. She insisted that the cast and crew call her only Lee throughout filming. Cinematographer for each Joker film, Lawrence Sher, was quoted saying, "I never even met the real Lady Gaga on set. I didn't know her at all." Whilst that must have been disappointing for Lawrence, I can only imagine how he felt when he eventually found out that her name also wasn't Lady or Gaga.
Very nice. You know what? I like that. Good point. Do you know what her actual name is?
Stephanie Joanne Angelina Germanotta.
Wow.
I've probably butchered the pronunciation.
No, I reckon you nailed it.
Germanotta sounds wrong.
Germanotta. So you feel like there's an opportunity there for a pretty cool stage name. Germanotta.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, if it is pronounced
Gaga?
like...
Do you reckon there's something like... Do you reckon
Maybe it's pronounced like Garganotta or something, and it is your pronunciation.
I've definitely said it wrong.
Yeah, but still, Germanotta versus Lady Gaga. You know what? It's iconic. We'll give it to her.
I might cut that.
Midnight seal of approval. Lady Gaga, you got it.
Method acting is a technique where actors use their own emotions and experiences to embody their characters, often staying in character, even off camera or off stage to maintain authenticity. Is it pretentious or is it practical? Marlon Brando in The Godfather.
Yeah, well, you're going from the old kind of Stanislavski school. I can't pronounce it. Stanislavski school now. So you got your Brando, James Dean, came out the back of that kind of 40s and 50s, and probably 50s more so. A lot of exciting things happening in the New York theatre scene. And that drove the institution of method acting. I don't know what you'd want to call it, but a lot of method comes from
Like the school.
from Stanislavski.
School of thought.
Yeah, and so embodying the character and effectively being one with what you are presenting and letting it absorb you and take over you. So Brando was a practitioner, but the thing with Brando is like there's 1,000,001 stories of him being pretty unprofessional as well.
Yeah.
So, and it's not because he's method acting, just because he couldn't be bothered to learn his lines. So he's really like one of a key example of the art being the reason why it's forgivable.
Okay.
He's great. So I was like, do what you want. I have no doubt you're going to give me some examples of ones where it ended up being shit. So
These are all incredible, I'll be honest.
I really don't have anywhere. I can rattle off some which have been.
Well, give us a couple off of this list. Obviously, Marlon Brando in The Godfather mumbled like Vito Corleone as part of his method acting and developed distinctive mannerisms, which I guess is probably is it called an underbite or something where your jaw goes out?
Well, he stuck stuff in his cheeks.
Did he now? So do you reckon he kept those in off screen?
Yeah, maybe. I didn't know how much he did. I know he kind of used to... When Francis Ford Coppola came to him and suggested it, he saw him getting into character and kind of starting to embody it. But I didn't know this was a well-known example.
Performance. Well, the next one you will know is a well-known performance, and certainly an accolade for the School of Thought. Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight. Probably the most famous method acting performance ever, I would say. Like if you just went and asked a random person on the street, can you name me a single method acting performance?
But I don't know, I wouldn't really call these method. Like, Heath Ledger didn't stay in character off screen. He did a lot to learn about the character.
Right.
He famously, like, shut up shop in a cabin in the woods miles away and wrote loads of notes down that got in the headspace of a very dark character. But listen to interviews with people like Michael Jai White, who played Gamble, I think it is, in Dark Knight. He says he was cracking wise. He was not in character.
Dude, right?
He stayed in makeup. He stayed in makeup, but he didn't like stay as the Joker.
Sense.
And another very famous example that's tied to that of a bad one is what's his name? 50 Seconds to Mars. The person who played Joker after Heath Ledger. 30 Seconds
Jared
to Mars.
Leto.
Jared Leto. Is he on your list?
No, he isn't.
So he's one of those incredibly famous examples of why people hate the idea of method acting.
Okay.
Because Jared Leto is a big method actor, and people don't like a lot of his performances. And that kind of makes people question the idea of, do you really need to method act? In the case of Joker, he was sending like used condoms to actresses and like dead rats to people in it.
That just
like
sounds like
writing
a
notes.
poor excuse for
Exactly, right? And then
weird behavior.
Recently he did Morbius, and in Morbius he has some sort of affliction where he's about to die, and he decided to not walk and like have people carrying him around.
Right, okay.
That has happened before, so a very famous example of someone who does method acting to a degree that everyone respects is Daniel Day-Lewis, who I know you will have examples of Daniel Day-Lewis in here. For My Left Foot, his first Oscar win, he played a paraplegic, someone who only had the use of his like left foot. That's the idea in the film. And he didn't move.
Good for him, man.
Made people carry him around. Very hard to work with. People found it very annoying because they're like, why the fuck are you doing this?
Yeah, this doesn't seem that helpful, but yeah.
He is considered one of, if not the greatest pure actors you'll ever see. So it genuinely is all forgiven based on how
here's an idea then.
Performance is received.
You've got Jared Leto's Joker, and you've got Daniel Day-Lewis's My Left Foot.
Yeah.
I have seen some clips of Jared Leto's Joker, and to me, what he struck me as somebody who was just very absorbed in getting to play the Joker and wasn't really ever. There was no understanding of character motive. There was no understanding. He was just doing random shit for the sake of it because he was enjoying himself so much. And I wonder if maybe there's an element of it can be an incredibly useful tool, but if you are using it just because you're so excited about that role, it might take you in the complete wrong direction if you're not careful.
Yeah, potentially. It's hard to say because his issue now is very much he's done a few stinkers, and then it's almost if you're not up to the standard of some method actors, you're then going to really undermine the whole process. And until he does a really good performance, it's going to be the case. When he's done well, so he won an Oscar for Dallas Buyers Club, which undoubtedly he'll have done some zany shit in that, I have no doubt. It's rewarded. So
does it have to be, as you clearly know a little bit about the school of thought, does it have to be binary? Does it have to be either on or off? Can you not method act as a Joker, but maybe not send the condoms? Make it everybody else's problem.
So Daniel Day-Lewis, right, in Lincoln,
Yep.
method acted. He was playing President Lincoln.
That makes sense.
So people referred to him as Mr. President. On and off, they're like, Mr. President. Now, he has said he doesn't go home and like not act as if there's no electricity or something, because it's like, I don't understand what's going on. I'm the president of America in the 19th century. Like, he only embodies the president practically. So he does all he can within the constraints of the world he is in. So his wife will have to call him Mr. President. Steven Spielberg called him Mr. President, the director. Cringy. So, and he's mentioned, like, I love my wife. She's had to put up with some weird people coming through the door over the years. And this is part of the reason why he takes such long breaks from acting. Really interesting stuff to look into, him talking about why he does this. He gets so invested in a character that he spends years cultivating and embodying the character that he's going to portray. He learns everything that's possible to learn about it for this film. And by the time he's finished, he is like, just everything's been taken out of him. He feels like his soul has been just unearthed onto the page, onto the screen, and he just needs to chill. He needs to just get back to normalcy. So everyone's like, wow, he's amazing. No one else can do that because he does good films.
I'm going to have to send used condoms to people.
And he wouldn't do that. I don't think if he was playing the Joker, he'd go that far. But say he had got... Say... All right, so which one is it? It's not Batman v Superman, is it, the Joker in? I think it might be, actually. No, it's Suicide Squad.
It's Suicide Squad.
So say Suicide Squad was a really well-received film. It would have excused... 100% people would have excused the fact
even
that
if
Jared
he was
Leto,
still bad in it. If he had the exact same performance, but the film was good, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, to be honest, like, people want to see the performance as bad because of everything that happened around it. Like,
okay.
The performance is the performance. He's just playing a fucking nut job. That's the Joker.
Yeah, okay.
Heath Ledger's is really good, but I think the thing is with acting, like, most of the time everyone just does the same thing. Like, they're given the same sequence and they all have learnt the same way, so they'll all approach it a very similar way. It's very rare you watch something original happening on screen, and when you do, you're like, shit, that's really cool.
Yeah, okay. If Daniel Day-Lewis is argued to be one of the greatest of all time, and he embodies these characters, and that's quite clearly the reason why he's so good, then maybe it should be something that people do as often as they can.
Look, I would argue that you could put Daniel Day-Lewis's performances up against any performances in history.
Okay.
Is that because he's great? Is it because he does the method? Is the method tied to great performances? Do you require going that deep into the character in order to bring out that level of depth in performance? Some people would argue yes. A famous example we haven't mentioned yet is there's a very famous story from when Dustin Hoffman, a method actor, was with Laurence Olivier in the film The Marathon Man back in the 60s, I want to say. So Laurence Olivier, a titan in British theatre. The Olivier Awards are named after him. At that period of time, he was older, but, you know, an absolute legend in both theatre and screen. Not a method actor. The English school didn't really grow up on that. But at that time, when his star was on the rise, you'd had your James Deans, Marlon Brandos. American theatre acting had been very heavily influenced by Stanislavski's method. So they go on this film together, and it's held up as an example of exactly what you are talking about. So the pretentious versus practical of method acting, because they came to blows, not physically, but a few times. Apparently it was quite tense, and it was all drawn from this differences in their acting style. There's one very famous story of, in it, Dustin Hoffman, who being the Marathon Man, I think he runs a lot or something. He just goes to extremes as a character. And Olivia's like, why are you doing that? And he's like, I need to be the character. I need to inhabit it. Otherwise, I won't be able to represent it on the screen. And then Olivia goes, have you tried acting, my dear boy?
Right, okay.
So he came from the like, you're pretending. We're pretending this is a performance. Why are you doing all of this? It's pointless. And it's...
Yeah, I follow.
Personally, I would argue that well-executed method really does bring more out of the character for the actor. But I think it is pretty try-hard.
Yeah, okay. So it's got to land a little bit.
Well, you're going to have loads of people just... I've been in drama circles and seen people being like, oh yeah, let's do the method. Let's really understand as much about our character as possible. And it's a very easy thing for people to fall back and rely on when they're not going to do very well.
What if you did method acting for roles that were more dissimilar to who you are as an actual person, the more challenging roles? So You know, I'm not that much like Abraham Lincoln. So it would make sense that maybe I would need a much more extensive preparation strategy.
Yeah, okay.
Whereas if I was doing a TV soap about some guy who was mad because someone hit his car, it's not exactly an especially foreign thing to have to try and do. And I probably wouldn't need to spend 6 months embodying that character to do that role.
Right. I think that you're talking here about the importance of having a framework. Is there no... Why wouldn't you have a strategy for bringing the most out of what you're trying to do? This is supposed to be a professional endeavor. These are people are supposed to be artists. And so then to try and undermine that by saying, well, why don't you just try pretending? Yeah. It's particularly ironic given Laurence Olivier's sentiments around his craft, because he was known in that era of British actors as they came up. There was him, there was John Gielgud, Alec Guinness, a bit younger, but came up around that time. And Gielgud was known as a more natural actor. Like, he was really able to just inhabit characters really effortlessly. And what Olivier had to do was rely on heavy cosmetics and makeup and production value. So what he would do to create his characters is he would really like lean into the dress department,
costume and makeup,
and he would work with them, and that would help him. Like, he had that crutch.
Oh, the hypocrisy.
Yeah, so it's like, why is your version better than mine? It's not even that your version is better. It's like you are completely undermining what another guy's doing. And I mean, you've got examples like Richard, I think it's Richard III, not Richard V, the one where he plays the humpback of Shakespeare's play. You know, that is like, he has to see and really take apart a full picture of a character in order to inhabit it. Like, you're doing your version of method, you know?
Yeah, I think that's totally fair enough. So have as much fun as you want, go as far as you want, but draw real fair boundaries around the people around you and don't be a dick, basically. But you should, I think that's so fair, you know? You are right. They are professionals and they are artists, and they should be absolutely allowed in all circumstances. If they want to go all out on a method act that is totally unnecessary, go for it. You're not hurting anyone, or just don't hurt anyone. You know, don't pull a Jared Leto and be a dick about it.
Stay within the confines of the law. That's fair.
Joker 2, Folie is absolutely panned. Everybody hates it, and I'm going to make a bit of a defense for it. And I think that part of the reason that people hate it is because, spoilers by the way, is because of the plot. Okay. Yep. Now, the plot, effectively, there are two plots running at the same time. There's the more obvious, tangible, real ones, which are the love story with Harley Quinn and the courtroom drama and what are the consequences of the first film. Now, that plot of love story, courtroom drama was very unsatisfying, very boring, didn't go anywhere, and really right in the forefront of everything. And so by the end, you feel absolutely fucking miserable. But I don't think that that's really the way to look at these films. And I think that the better way to look at it, and I said this earlier, was Joker 1 is a question of what would it take to make a human being become Joker? Mm-hmm. The second one is what are the consequences of that, but not legally and not in terms of a love story, but in terms of what it would do to that human being. It's been a character exploration since the start. It's still a character exploration. Mm-hmm. Now, I think that Todd Phillips made a mistake here because it should have been more clear this. Yes, he had the expositional beginning that explained it, but it still didn't feel like it throughout it. You still felt like I'm watching a really bad courtroom drama and a really bad love story. But really, if you take a story as beginning, middle, and end where there's a conflict and a resolution, the conflict that really was actually very entertaining and the thing that I really enjoyed was after the events that turn a human being, Arthur Fleck, into Joker, what would that take? Well, it would take a miserable fucking life with nobody who loves him, and his medicine gets pulled, and he loses his job, and it just, the list goes on and on and on. He breaks, he becomes Joker. Joker number 2, and the conflict is if you now introduced a little bit of love for Arthur Fleck, what would happen? Would he become the Joker still, or would he become Arthur Fleck if that love was conditional of the fact that he was Joker? So Harley Quinn turns up, she shows him a bit of love, and suddenly he is tormented, and he is in this position where she only loves him because he is Joker. He finally feels a little bit of acceptance, which is all he's ever needed. Now he's starting to become human again, and the whole conflict is, do I be this human being, Arthur Fleck, who feels this horrible pain of being a human being and feeling the remorse of the actions that I've taken, or do I settle into this warm, comfortable, happy masquerade of being a Joker? Now, the evidence I have for this being the actual plot is shown in the color of the film. Todd Phillips does have a very good command of color, and he's very intentional with it. Specifically, there are two colors which are really, really common in cinema, teal and orange. They're on opposite sides of the color wheel, blue and orange. Really, really common because they're really, really beautiful, and they are beautiful because we see them in nature all the time. Okay, it's warm and cold, it's the sky, it's fire, it's around us constantly, and so a lot of films use it. And if the film is following the conflict inside Arthur's head and inside his heart of, do I be this Joker and slip into almost like an addiction, like having that hit of my addiction where I'm happy and I'm safe and I'm warm, or do I accept the cold, hard reality of being a human being and taking the consequences of my actions, both emotionally and realistically? That is shown through the use of teal and orange. There are scenes where he is subdued and miserable, and he is Arthur Fleck, and you see tons and tons of blues. It's very cold and dark, and it's painful, and it's real. And then there are scenes where Lee will set fire to a piano, and the room is blue, and they have this connection where he's like becoming Joker. And whilst this is happening, the room, she walks over to him, her side of the room is orange, his side of the room is blue. As they get closer, the room gets more and more orange until it finishes with orange, and then he is the Joker. This happens time and time and time again throughout the movie. There is a scene where he's out wailing in the rain. It's shown in the trailer. He's like chained up and he's laughing, but he's wailing. It's incredible. And it's very, very blue. It's very, very teal. And I think that, yes, this was not a good film, right? But the colors that he used, when you look out for it, take you through the real journey that I think is actually rewarding and enjoyable about this movie, which is, what the hell would this human being who did what he did in the first film, what would he do if the very thing that made him the person, this evil Joker, the lack of love, he now gets some love, but only on the condition that he is Joker. And every time that he is doing a balancing act between the two, every time he's swapping, we will show that with color. And I thought it was really beautiful and impressive. And it, because I was looking out for it, it took me on a journey that I think this film is completely unfairly critiqued. And that is one element that I really appreciated.
He did a similar thing with Joker 1, I believe, like where you're supposed to understand. He left clues as to which scenes were real and which weren't.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So a really interesting example, it's off topic, but quite interesting that I read about, is on the surface, in Joker 1, he was adopted, Arthur Fleck, by Penny. And Penny was delusional and thought that she was having an affair with Mr. Wayne.
Yes.
In Thomas Wayne, that's it. In reality, there are subtle clues that wasn't the case. So they lead us to believe that she was delusional, but he left clues that they actually did have an affair, and he is really Thomas Wayne's son.
Right.
So the two clues, one that have been spotted, there may be more, and I read this on a post. One is that when she's talking to him, when he realises that he's Thomas Wayne's son, he does it because he reads a letter that she's sending to Thomas Wayne, and it's saying like, your son needs you, he's a good boy, blah, blah, blah. And when he confronts her about it, she's locked in the bathroom, hiding from him, and she says something like, they made me sign some papers. At the time, you think that's non-disclosure agreements. But in reality, it turns out they said she adopted you. So if they were adoption papers and she's going, they made me sign some papers, the idea is that he made her cover it up by saying this is adoption papers. There is also a scene when he's full Joker near the end, just before he's about to go on his tirade, kill Murray. He looks at a photo of her, and he's kind of he may have just killed his victim, with puddles there, in a very flamboyant mood,
theatrical.
Yeah, it's seen as kind of a B-roll footage just leading up to his dance down the stairs. He turns over the picture of his mother, and it says something like, "I always loved your smile, TW."
What? Yeah. Okay.
And then the question is, so is that one of his unreliable narrator portions?
Yes.
And the idea is it's not, because in his unreliable narrator portions, I think nothing bad happens to him.
Right, okay.
Only good things happen to him.
Okay.
Whereas bad things happen in the other one. And it's literally just after or just before he kills a guy. So it's suspected that isn't him making it up, but that's actually a real
legitimate. God, yeah.
So Todd Phillips has been known to do this in the first one. It's interesting. He used colour. I don't know if he used colour in the first one. I do remember it being very vivid when he was in the dreamlike sequences. It does seem to be a bit more vibrant in my mind, but I might just be Mandela affecting.
For sure.
But it does actually lend itself to the point that we did make at the start, where they've gone for something artistic here. The plot is a shambles. It's a mess. Yeah. And there's a lot of things that we didn't like.
At the core of it.
Yeah, just... But one thing that we both really respected is that they went for something that seemingly people find to have been self-indulgent. But for me, certainly, I was like, they really tried to push the boat out to make something that is separate and could be viewed as better than the first one. And they've probably failed in most people's estimations. But we're talking into it and thinking... The colour thing's really cool. That's cool. It was well done.
Yes, the piece of art sucked, but there was skill and there was brave boldness in making it the way that he made it. And it wasn't very enjoyable to sit through, but it wasn't devoid of any skill, any talent, any love, any artistry. Well, if you enjoyed that, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.
Cheers.